So if you haven't heard, Turo just made a huge decision that could be the start to the end. Turo recently decided to end the connection with third-party management softwares, CarSync and FleetWire. This could potentially ruin the business model for thousands of hosts across the country. Stay tuned to see the effect that this game-changing news can have on hosts and what you should do moving forward if you rent cars on Turo. Now you may be wondering why I'm sitting here with a mimosa, but I'm actually in JFK Airport on my way to Bali. But you know I had to stop and give you this update on the Turo game. As I was scrolling through Instagram and Facebook, all I seen was upset hosts talking about how CarSync and Turo are no longer going to work together moving forward. So it was only right to tap in with my bag chasers and let them know what was going on, even while I'm at the Amex Centurion Lounge sipping on a mimosa. Now, for those of you who don't know, CarSync is a car rental management software that connects to car sharing platforms like Turo and HireCar. This software is so important to car rental hosts because it pretty much gathers all of your information from all your different cars and different platforms and brings them into one place so you can easily stay organized on top of all your numbers and do other actions like send automated messages and tracking your tools, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But what you need to know is that without this software, potentially thousands of hosts could, run into trouble as far as managing their car rental fleet when this disconnect actually happens with Turo and CarSync. As far as my business personally, I actually been using CarSync since I first started car renting back in early 2020. So my very first car, my Chevy Malibu, as soon as I got it, I was able to put it out on the platform. And since the beginning, I've been using CarSync to do a lot of things to keep my car rental business up and afloat. One of the biggest things that we actually use when it comes to CarSync is the automated message templates, which means essentially we don't have to be there with our cars when we're checking guests in and out, because before, during, and after the reservation, CarSync actually sends guests these automated messages to let them know what to do when they get to the car, as they're going through their trip, and when they drop off the car. So you can imagine for hosts with 10, 20 plus cars, how important this feature is going to be, because if they take it away, now these hosts have to essentially text guests back and forth with every one of their cars when it comes to their reservations. Another huge component of CarSync is the collection of market data that it actually lets you harness from these platforms. One of the biggest ones there is going to be the Turo Demand Index, which essentially shows you all the cars in your area. It shows you how demand they are, what makes and models are in the most demand, and this allows you to have an educated idea on what cars are going to do the best in your market. And that's just an example of another powerful tool that us car rental hosts use from CarSync on a day-to-day basis. You can kind of think of CarSync as if you were to put your messages, notes, emails, and bank app all rolled into one application on your phone. It's literally that, but for our car rental business. Turo officially announced that they're going to be ending that relationship with CarSync starting April 30th. And since we got that news, car sharing hosts like myself have been in an uproar, because without this tool, it can really leave us in a bad spot with having to supplement a lot of these tools that they have provided us with other alternatives that may not be as effective. Honestly, it's crazy to even think about running a car rental business without the help of CarSync, because even what I'm doing right now, being able to be on a flight to Bali, Indonesia, and still have my car rental business running effectively back home is all a product of CarSync. And that's because, as we said before, CarSync is allowing me to send automated messages to my guests back home. So right before they pick up the car, whether I'm on a flight or not, they can get the messages. Same thing with when they check out, as well as my GPS and tracking tools. So even when it comes to the GPS tracking, that allows me to know exactly what's going on with my cars. Even when I'm in a different country, I know exactly where they're at back at home with the renters. Now you may be thinking, well, if CarSync is such a great tool for Turo hosts, why would Turo actually want to ban or disconnect their platform from CarSync? And that's the exact question Turo hosts like myself have been trying to figure out for the last couple of days. Now, Turo has sent out an email pretty much stating, as I said, that they're looking to disconnect CarSync on April 30th, but because of the reasoning of raised safety concerns. Essentially what they're saying is that, the sharing of login credentials through a third party using what they call an API, which is essentially just an internet connection, is causing a risk for Turo hosts and pretty much the platform itself. Now, if you ask me, That's cap. So I've heard through the grapevine a few rumors on the real reasons on why Turo might actually be looking to make this exit from CarSync. The first one being that Turo has been looking to do an IPO for the last few years, which is an initial public offering, pretty much meaning that they're looking to go fully corporate and have their company be listed on the stock exchange and allow pretty much people to be able to buy shares of the company. Now, this is a huge thing because they have to go through a lot of protocol. They have to submit a lot of documentation to the SEC, which is going to all go into review. So pretty much people are saying that, they can't have ties with third parties. They can't, be susceptible to like data leaks and a lot of stuff like that when it comes to connecting to CarSync. So that can be a background reason on why they're kind of disconnecting the use of CarSync. Another rumor that I heard is that Turo was actually looking to buy CarSync as a company. As us Turo hosts know, CarSync is actually a free software. So all of those things that I described as far as those benefits, we're actually getting free. Now, the play with CarSync actually was that they wanted to build these instruments, build these tools, and build their business up for the long-term goal of Turo buying it, much like a venture capital or a tech firm, does in like Silicon Valley. And honestly, I think that CarSync built a great platform, and if they were to be bought by Turo, it would be a good thing. So I don't know necessarily what happened, but I heard that Turo was in talks with CarSync of actually buying the software, but somewhere throughout the process, the deal fell through. And instead of Turo, reconstructing the deal or trying to figure out what happened, they pretty much said, man, forget it. We'll pretty much build all the tools ourselves in the platform. We have a good understanding of it. So, why waste millions to billions of dollars in buying and acquiring the software if they think they can do it themselves? Now, personally, I know anytime Turo rolls out any new features, it's always buggy. There's always some glitches that they need to work out in the very beginning. So when it comes to incorporating things like toll trackers, integrating the GPS code switch, a lot of those things, as well as cross-platform management, I'm not so sure that Turo can actually replicate what CarSync is doing. But I'm certainly hopeful that after the April 30th date, they can get somewhere close and allow us hosts another good platform to be able to use as far as car rental management. Now, Turo has already rolled out the automated message templates, but a lot of hosts haven't been using them. They still have used CarSync because CarSync's message templates are a lot more dynamic. They're a lot more versatile. You can send out a lot of different variables as opposed to Turo's, which is a little bit more basic and honestly a lot harder to set up. So the big question is, what does this mean for Turo hosts moving forward? Well, the first option is relying on Turo to go ahead and replace those tools that we used to use CarSync for. As I said, they did send out an email stating that not only would they be disconnecting CarSync on April 30th, but in the meantime, they're looking to roll out similar features so that we can use all in-platform. So I'm hoping that by April 30th, they start actually rolling these things out and we can utilize them in the same way that we utilize CarSync. If not, that's going to leave a huge hole in demand of what a lot of car rental hosts were doing to manage their fleets. And as I said, especially car rental hosts that had 10 plus cars, it's really hard to keep track of all those numbers, keep track of the reservation in and out dates, and specifically talking to 10, 15 guests at a time. Now, another casualty in all of this is when you start to think about the cross-platform renting. And what I mean by that is hosts who rent not only on Turo, but hire car and maybe get around as well. What CarSync did was essentially connect to all three of these car sharing platforms, and no matter what cars you had on each platform, it would pretty much bring them all together and give you the information all as if they were on one. So for hosts like myself who use not only Turo but use HireCar, this was a really good tool because I can see all my data in one place. I can control my messages, and once again, I can send those auto messages out, not just on Turo, but on HireCar. So moving forward, it's going to be very interesting to see how are they going to connect or make it even a little bit easier for car rental hosts who might be on two separate platforms. Now, honestly, I don't think this is a big thing that Turo is concerned about because it is in the terms and conditions that you can't rent the same car on Turo and HireCar. I don't know. I just think personally this is a bad move for Turo. As you can already see, a lot of hosts are, giving bad backlash. And to be honest, Turo already didn't have the best people who didn't really understand the platform. And all of this is going to do is kind of put it even more in the negative spotlight. So I think that Turo probably could have handled this a little bit better. Like I said, CarSync is a great platform. So if we could have seen or could see a Turo and CarSync merger, I think that's going to be best not only for the platform, but for the host and all parties involved. So it's really interesting just to see, you know, how all this is playing out. And honestly, if Turo can just take CarSync away this fast, it really makes you start to think about how safe you are renting your cars on another platform, right? Just like when you post your social media content and build your business on social media, you're essentially renting that platform. And that's the same thing we're doing when we go to Turo, when we go to HireCar, we're renting the platform. Any changes that they make, alterations or things that they take away, we have to deal with. But that's also a big part of business as well, is being able to be adaptable. So when we think about being adaptable, now let's actually talk about what's next for Turo hosts. So we have a few options as Turo hosts. Number one, do we stay on Turo, right? You know, I've been on there now for about 3 years. So personally, I'm most likely going to stay on the platform. When it comes to Turo, I have multiple cars on there. So not only my day-to-day drivers, but the cars that I purely rent for profit, those accumulate to a big portion of my income for my business. So, you know, in all businesses comes bumps and bruises. So pretty much this peer-to-peer renting space that we're in is very popular, but it's kind of a deregulated space. So what you're seeing now, you're seeing, you know, a lot of laws and just a lot of changes catching up with these peer-to-peer rental platforms like Turo, like Airbnb. They're kind of putting some waves in the system as a whole. As I said, it's up to us to adapt and move forward with these changes and still remain profitable. And the next option we have as hosts is to actually start doing private rentals. And essentially what this is taking our cars off of Turo, off of HireCar, and renting them out ourselves. Now, I have mixed feelings on private rentals. I definitely know a lot of hosts who do private rentals, who do a mix of hybrid, which are private rentals and car sharing apps. But all in all, I actually don't do private rentals myself. And there's a few reasons for that. Number one is very contractual, which means you really got to have all your documents in place. You got to make sure your contracts are airtight. And even if so, if something happens and you just get a bad guess, you know, that can easily wind up being a court case and you having to sue somebody even with those contracts in place. So, you know, as bad as we may think Turo is sometimes, honestly, they take a lot of that burden off of our shoulders as hosts. Another thing, when we start to talk about the burden, is car damages, accidents, insurance. That's a huge part of knowing how to get into private rentals, is understanding what commercial insurance you need, as well as what to do when damages occur to your vehicle. Now, as far as the insurance, I believe Lula has started to offer private rental insurance. So that's been an option for a lot of my mentees as far as going into the private route. And I've seen a lot of my mentees also get paid out by Lula. So that's the most important thing, you know, when it comes to car sharing, is when something happens to your car, are you going to get reimbursed? And personally, with the method that I teach all my mentees, and going through Turo, you know, it's a very clean process. I've really never been lowballed by Turo. And even though I've heard stories of people, you know, getting low estimates, they do allow you to submit a supplement through the body shop, which usually gets the entire claim covered. That is something Turo is good at, is being able to kind of cover those liabilities you would have to take on if you were renting these cars privately yourself. So with that being said, I don't know personally if the private route is what I'm going to do off the jump, but it is something I'm starting to consider more, and I'm definitely hearing a lot more rumblings about with my car sharing students as well. Now it's going to be up to you, you know, if you choose to stay on the Turo platform and adapt to these changes, or if you shift your business model and go into the private rentals, or if you were doing that before. The main thing here we need to understand is when we're on these other platforms, whether it be car rentals, whether it be social media, anything where we have to rent space from another company or provider, we have to understand that the control is in their hands and they can change any rules or terms at a drop of a dime. Most importantly, we need to be prepared for that, and we have to adapt to that. So I wanted to definitely drop this video and just tell you guys pretty much what's going on with CarSync, you know, the waves that Turo is making, and try to get us a little bit more mentally and business-wise prepared for what's coming April 30th. And for my bag chasers who still want to get into this car sharing game, whether it be Turo, hire car, or even do a private rentals, I got the perfect thing for you. So because you rocked out with me for this entire video, I'm actually going to drop a 50% discount code in the link in the description for enrollment in my car sharing master course, which is the full step-by-step blueprint of how I started, scaled, and managed my car rental business still to this day. As you can see, I'm in the airport lounge. I'm getting ready to fly to the other side of the world, but my car rental business is still running. It's still making me money, and if anything, it's actually funding this trip. And you can do the same thing too. All you need to do is get the right steps, have the right knowledge, and have a great community behind you. And as I said, if you lock in with me today, that's exactly what I'm offering you for 50% off. So let's tap in, bag chasers, and get to it. Besides that, I hope this video was valuable for not only my current Turo host, but for anybody who may be thinking about getting into Turo or car share as a whole. These are things you do need to know. And as I said, you need to be adaptable. So if you found any value in this content, in this video, make sure you drop me a like and a subscribe so we can go ahead and push this video and this channel out to bag chasers just like yourself, and we can run this bag up together. You already know the vibes. I appreciate you tapping in. Until next time, bag chasers.